Monday, June 12th, to review the capital improvement budget plan to order. The Honorable Mayor Mosher will be coming late here this evening, so we'd like to have a nomination for someone to serve as Mayor Pro Tem. As a reminder, you can make that motion as a unanimous ballot as well.
I would make a motion for Nathan to be mayor tonight and move that nomination cease. And we, what do you say? Unanimous ballot.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there is a motion and a second for Commissioner Johnson to serve as our Mayor Pro Tem here until we have our mayor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Well, we have a lot to discuss tonight as far as our capital improvement budget, but first I'll ask, is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission about something not on the agenda? Seeing no movement, I will turn it over to you, Amy, to begin walking us through the proposed budget.
Okay.
We should probably do a roll call first, though.
What? Yes, do that roll call.
So Alf, you could do that.
Benson.
Here.
Brunig.
Here.
Hanoff.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Minor.
Here.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
City Manager Leone.
I'm here.
City Attorney Denherter.
Here. All right, take it away, Amy.
Having the CIP in hand when going over the CIP makes one's job a little bit easier. Just want to bring to everyone's attention, if you are online or if you're following this, commissioners, on SharePoint, on the front page that Kristen and Dwayne and their team have put together, you can see, well, it's our Marne Creek project, but if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on here, Yankton GIS, for the map. And that will take you to all of our projects. So if you're curious about, you know, gosh, where are they talking about? Or I just can't remember, let's say, where Jacqueline Drive is, or some street that we might talk about this evening. You can use that map, and that's a real handy tool to look through and talk about when we talk about each project. So a couple of things. Tonight, as you know, we're going to talk about a 5-year capital improvement plan. So it is a fluid plan. So while we'll primarily talk about things remaining in 23 and focus on 24, we are looking out into the future, because we know that what we need to do in upcoming years is going to impact your decisions for next year. So a lot of the things that I'm going to mention tonight are not necessarily things that have been talked about in the public, or maybe have been talked about the public, but you haven't discussed formally. They're ideas, they're opportunities, and in some senses they're just needed capital improvements that the city needs to continue on. We are not balanced yet. As you know, I'm not required to present the full budget to you until August 1st. So as we move forward this evening, after tonight, we'll take your input here on the capital, and then we'll start really digging into all of the operating. So when we talk about capital, we're talking about, I call it the meeting of what we're going to do and what we're going to do with it. So we're talking about things like street projects and infrastructure and trucks and equipment and the things that we need to do our job. We're talking about brick and mortar and buildings. What we're not talking about today is electricity cost or wages or things of that nature. We're not talking about the operating costs of our organization. those definitely play a big part in the capital improvement plan. So they're not separate conversations, but they're not what we're focused on tonight. But you do have to kind of keep those things in the back of your head while we're going through the capital improvement budget. So tonight, your job is to hear sort of the highlights. I know you've all looked through the capital improvement plan over the weekend and can recite it front to back. So if there's something that absolutely has to stay or absolutely has to go, tonight is the opportunity to tell us that so we can make adjustments. You can do that anytime through the budget process, of course, and you can do that anytime really throughout the year. But this is a good framework this evening for us to hear about that. In commissions past, my understanding was city manager presented the capital improvement plan and the commission said, you know, we really want to redo Whiting Drive. We don't want to wait for that. That wasn't something the staff had planned. So that's your purview if there's something that you want to bring forward and have a discussion about to talk. So I'll pause throughout the budget as we go through to see if there's things that you want to ask or talk about. But this is a good time to tell us about the things that you're interested in and that you have more questions about. We also have our department heads here. You see all their faces in the crowd this evening for the public's benefit. They're here for technical questions or explanations or things that maybe I can't help answer or to help you give a fuller picture. So, you know, if we're talking about a fire engine truck, which we might talk about this evening, and you're wondering, you know, gee, how many trucks do we actually have, and what's the real life of a truck? You know, that's something that Chief Linke can provide. So don't hesitate either to, you know, turn on your mic and get my attention so we can get your technical questions answered as well. These are color coordinated, as you've seen when you go through the budget. So you can see lots of green and yellow. So green indicates something that's been increased, and yellow indicates a change. So you're going to see that as well throughout the budget. As you know, when we budget things, the costs, especially nowadays, are different a lot of times when they actually happen. So we have a better picture of now what 2023 looks like, and that also helps us budget better for 2024. Most of the capital improvement plan is focused, like I said, on 2023 and 2024, and then the out years, as you know, we push. You're going to see some projects in there that you say, well, we've had this in there since I've been on the commission. We've had this in here, you know, 4 years, 5 years. Just because it's budgeted doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do it. And I say that because if we have a building project, for example, let's take the library roof. We knew we had some problems with the roof at the library for a number of years, but we got by with some maintenance. We can't get by with maintenance anymore. Now we're at a point where we have to fix it, but we don't just fix it because it's in the plan. We take a look at it and make the best decisions we can given what's going on. Likewise, we have some things that we didn't know were going to come up, and those things will need to be put in the capital improvement plan. We have to make room for those in our budget. We'll talk about some of those too this evening. So with that, I want to get started here. You know that we've set tonight and tomorrow for capital improvement plan if you need tomorrow night as well. Another alternative, if you want to talk past 7 o'clock, you can certainly talk past 7 o'clock as well after you adjourn from your regular business meeting. Another option would be the June 26th work session if you need that. I haven't planned a topic for that as well. So you have some options if you feel like you just didn't get enough information or you need a little bit more, time to talk about things. So anything you want to ask right now or ready to dive in? Everyone looks like really excited to dive in. Okay. So let's start out with what maybe not be such great news, but there's some things that we want to talk about. So as you know, and as I've told you, there is some discussion about an initiated measure that will likely be on the ballot in 2024 associated with food sales tax. South Dakota is one of the very few states that have a sales tax on food. I'm not here to talk about what side of the coin you might personally stand on, but I will tell you that groceries and food is an area of tax for Yankton that we benefit greatly from. We have a lot of small towns that come to Yankton to do food shopping, and we have a lot of places that sell quote unquote consumables. It's not just Hy-Vee and Walmart anymore. It seems like almost everywhere you go has some groceries. Walgreens and Menards and Baumgarts and all those good things. So that would impact us tremendously. So we have to keep that in mind. So as we're talking about big ticket projects, if we don't have a revenue source for them, I would really caution you strongly, more than any other year, we need to be careful and think about those, or wait and see what happens here before we dive in head first, too deep into a project, a very expensive project. Also, we have some other doom and gloom. A cost of things that we're buying now is not even explainable through inflation, and I don't know what inflation really is right now. It seems to be different depending upon what you're buying, but a lot of the things we're purchasing don't even track, to me, with the rate of inflation. So, for example, I asked Adam, to talk to me a little bit about walking floor trailers. Those are the trailers that we put our refuse in, and they get driven to Vermilion and go into the dump, and they creep along. They're a pretty cool piece of equipment. We try to buy 2 every year. In 2020, we paid $70,000 approximately a piece for those. And I think in October of the last ones that were awarded, in October of 2022, we paid $112,000 for one of those. And oh, by the way, we just got the ones that we ordered in 2021 a month or so ago. So that's another sort of troublesome thing to us, is that we might order and be able to afford the equipment that we need, but we might not get it. So I think consequently in the operating plan, you're going to see more dollars put into areas for repair and maintenance, because we might have to keep things going a little longer than we want to. Maybe this will loosen up and we won't have to deal with that throughout the whole year. But, I'm trying to plan for the worst and hoping for the best. We can't operate without, a payloader. We can't operate without snowplows. We have to have them. We have to have them operable. So those are a few things that it's good for you to think about and talk about and understand, because we're going to have to explain them as we're moving into our capital improvement plan. So,
Amy, I'm sorry
Yes.
if I missed this, but are we estimating that the food tax impact is about $1 million a year?
I don't know what we're estimating, because initially I was saying the number at least $1 million. And then as I read more newspaper articles and more about it, I don't know what consumables means. Does that mean all food? Does that mean packaged food as well? Is it going to impact our triple B? Does that mean, things like cigarettes and alcohol? So hard to say. Some people are throwing out, we had a first-class mayor's meeting last week, and some cities are throwing out, I think Mitchell said, at least $850. So then to me, $1 million would track, but I guess it depends upon what's all included in that. But when you think, for example, that $1 million is approximately what it costs us to run the library on an annual basis, it's, a quarter of the police department wages. When you think about $1 million, it's a significant impact. So if it were to be that much or more, we've got issues. So I don't know if the Department of Revenue will give us a way to calculate that. I'm guessing as that election gears up, there'll be lobbyists on both sides of the coin that will help you tell whatever story, whatever your story you believe in. But we'll try to drill down on a number once we know what we're dealing with. So, okay, that's all the bad news. Let's let's not talk about the bad news now. Let's talk about what we're going to try to get done here. The first page is City Manager's Office and Finance, Information Services, as well as Community Development. Not a whole ton of big projects there to talk about, but would like to point out to you all that under Community Development, we have two amounts budgeted for the comprehensive plan. We've been waiting for our census numbers, and finally now we have census numbers, so we feel confident about going ahead. But that's one of those projects that's been in the budget and has gotten pushed. So we're going to move forward with that comprehensive plan, which will be an extensive and highly detailed effort, not just by Dave and the Planning Commission, but there'll certainly be a lot of community involvement in that as well. So that should roadmap us for the next couple of decades, I presume, on
Amy,
planning.
when was the last plan done, comprehensive plan?
I want to say 03. I was going to say 97, so I was 6 years off. 03, so it's time. I'm moving on without hearing or hearing hands go up or lights go on. Want to talk a little bit about police department. Human resources is there too, but really most of human resources is operating and dealing with the people, so they don't buy a lot of capital. So that's why, you don't see a big number there. As you can see, when you look at vehicle replacement, we're not only increasing the budget number there, but we're also a little bit lagging behind. So this year, we're purchasing some vehicles, and we had some carryover from vehicles that we didn't receive in previous years. And in 2024, we have 2 squads budgeted. We try to buy 2 a year when we can, and their vehicles are difficult to find now, so that's our intention. We have a couple of other pieces of capital, not necessarily high dollar, but things I want to just kind of talk to you about. So I've told you all this before, but my philosophy on capital budgeting and really budgeting in general is you have to do the things you have to do, and there's just no way around it. You have to take care of the people who do them. There's no way around that. But you should also do a few things that are fun to do, not outside your means, but that are a little bit fun and interesting and make the community an interesting place. And so, my father would like to say fun costs money. So when you see the line item that says sign under the police department, we have a small number budgeted there for 2024. In the basement of the police department, they have an old sign that used to hang outside our police department. It needs to be refurbished, and it needs some TLC. I don't know if it's a historic. It's historic to me, but I don't know if it would classify as being historic. But it's a neat sign, and we've talked with Sheriff Chrissy and the chief, and I think that it would be nice to get that spruced back up and put outside of the safety center, and just add a little something to the police department. Most people in our community interact with the police in a different way, and our police department, as you know, likes to do some promotional things as well. So not that it's going to be really directional, although it will say police, but it's more or less, something for aesthetics. So we're interested in that, and we hope you are as well. We also have some evidence room cameras we need to upgrade, as well as some voice stress analysis equipment that we need to upgrade as well. So any questions on police?
The body cameras, are we doing an upgrade? Is that why there's more of an expense?
Yes,
Sure.
so Chief, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the age of body cameras and where we're headed there.
So our body cameras, son,
Yep.
our body cameras were purchased approximately 2018, and we have replaced a few here and there. The company that we went with has been bought out by Motorola, so they're changing their software for their equipment that they're building. So basically, as ours go out, we're going to have to switch to theirs. So this is an upgrade to that system. Our current stuff will still work, but then as we need to replace these, we'll start buying the Motorola ones to replace, and it'll kind of be a dual system.
I also wanted to ask, because this has come up in some conversations I've had, so with individuals who have limited proficiency in English, how are we currently dealing with that? And, do we need more support for those efforts? Because I think it's very important that the police are able to communicate with individuals who may not have English as a first language, and could lead to a lot of other problems if we don't have good relationships there.
So we deal with those a couple different ways. If it's a casual conversation, maybe nothing's too serious. A lot of times, every officer has a cell phone. They'll use Google Translate to communicate. When you get into more serious cases, ideally we'd have somebody that can come in and translate. Right now, we do have an officer that he graduated the academy, does speak Spanish. He's done some translation for us even before we went to the academy, and he'll do it later on. We also have DCI agent Javier Murguia, who's in the area, who helps out with that as well. But not everybody is not just a Spanish-speaking world anymore. There's a bunch of different languages that actually come in. So we have used Language Line for a number of years now, and it kind of varies on how much we spend from month to month. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, depending on how much we use it. So that option is there, and that covers a variety of different languages. So that would be used on a major case if the other services aren't available. We can't have an officer that's certified come in and do it.
Thanks. And I would invite you to if you see opportunities that you think you need more support, that's something I'm interested in having a conversation about. I don't know what resources are out there necessarily, but just want you to know that my ears are open if you're seeing an issue out there. So thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Not a capital cost, but at our next commission meeting, you will see an agreement between Connecting Cultures and the City of Yankton for a translation service. They've been providing translation service to us pro bono, and we are requesting enough services that we really need more support. So looking at that for this year and next year to see how that goes on a per word basis. So you can't directly translate. It's difficult when you're using Google Translate to translate a document, because something that we might use as a word might be a literal translation, but it may not make sense. So we want to make sure that when we're inviting people to events, we're doing that appropriately, and we're using language that they can, or terms that they can understand in their native language. And this would be for Spanish speaking only at this point for translation services. But that's for next week, and that's a citywide sort of contract because we use them in all of our departments. Under the fire department, you can see some annual expenses. All of our departments try to write grants for equipment, and when grants are available, we certainly apply. We want to make sure that we have the right personal protective equipment for our firefighters, as well as we cyclically replace, our hoses and water equipment. They're inspected. If they don't need to be replaced, they're not, but they take on a lot of wear and tear. The self-contained breathing apparatus, if you're not familiar with the acronym there, we try to look for grant funds there as well, but we need to work on replacing. What we're trying to do is replace so many of them every year. As you look into the out years there, you can see we do have that engine number 1 scheduled for 2025. If you were paying attention to the number that we had in the budget last year there, it's much higher. So we've had to take a realistic approach here to budgeting and really bump up numbers for equipment and trucks and those types of things, because we just know that our numbers that we were using are old. So that changes the picture quite a bit.
Amy, how many years are left on that debt service for Second Station, if you happen to know?
I don't happen to know, but Dwayne or Al might know. They're looking at each, oh, Dwayne's looking. Okay, we'll get back to you on that. Ben, how are you Commissioner Brunick, how are you doing so far?
Just fine.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You bet. While they're looking for that, we'll talk about engineering and streets. You can see as we get into streets again here, we have a large number budgeted for trucks in 2024. Some of you'll remember we used to have street and snow removal in separate budgets, and they're together now. So that's some of the increase that you see there, but certainly the cost of those vehicles have gone up as well. So I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. 2028, so 5 years by my math. That's for the retirement of the debt service for Fire Station 2. If you take a look at the out year, 2027, this is something to start shaking around and rolling around in your heads. We have an old street shop, central garage, fueling station area. If you haven't been down there and you want to go down there, at some point when we get a lull, I'm sure Adam and Corey would love to take you down there. It works. We make it work. It certainly is not conducive for a nice flow. You probably know, or maybe you don't know, that transit fuels there and the sheriff's office fuels there, and we work with a lot of different agencies. In the winter, we work with the school district and store some salt for them, and have a lot of partnerships there. The building is quite old. It's starting to really show its age, and probably we need to start thinking about what do we need to do there. We also have purchased a hardscapes building that we thought might be part of our solution. As it turns out, that building is not as in great of a shape as we had hoped, and then after our storm damage and roof damage, it's really in less great shape than we thought as well. So we need to start thinking about phasing in a plan that makes sense. We also have a fueling station at Parks. So if you know where the old bus barn is, that's where our Parks operation takes place. Questions just to throw out to you to start thinking about when you need something to think about. Does it make sense to have 2 fueling stations? Should we have 1 central fueling station? Does it make sense to have maintenance all in one place in the future and have 1 area for maintenance? The way we operate is if one of the squad cars needs an oil change, they bring it down to the maintenance shop. We do some maintenance in Parks of equipment, but some is done by Kevin down at the street shop because, we have the lift and the equipment there. So what makes sense down there, what doesn't? The facilities for our staff there are not ideal, and that's probably the kindest way I could put it. I would say very little is probably accessible, and there needs to be change. So that's something we need to start talking about and looking at, and the best way to see what we're talking about is to make a visit. So I'm not exactly sure when that facility was built. Did we decide that? So it was pieced together over several years, but we think that initially it was built before we were, right? Yeah. So it's been around a while. And there's been several additions, but what makes sense for the future, and then what partnerships could there be? We've had discussions, for example, with Riverboat Days about partnering with some kind of facility for them, or them doing a facility on their own, on some city, land with a lease. We've talked about those things. Just how does that really make sense for our community long term? And it's not really fun. I mean, it might be fun for the guys in Public Works, but it's not maybe necessarily a fun project for the community. But we got to have a place, to do our maintenance and keep our equipment, in good working condition now more than ever, I would say. Also, everything we have is sitting outside, not everything, but most of it. And that's tough on any kind of vehicle or any kind of equipment. So just think about that in the future and, what should be the solution there. So we do need to do something temporarily with the building. May or may not get that done this year, but we need to think long term what our solution is. You will see in various parts of the budget loan to TID number 12 or loan to TID number 11. And so this is, portions of your tax increment finance district projects, either on the Gale Drive or the Mead area development. So in this case, you see we're loaning, we're borrowing from streets to do a portion of 33rd Street there. So you're going to see that throughout your budget here as part of the way we're financing that improvement, that portion of that improvement. And we could talk another hour and a half about the two TIDs, and we will if you want to. But for the sake of time, I'd like to at least get through some things. But you'll see that throughout the budget. City Hall is another item I'd like to talk with you a little bit about. Many of you have been in City Hall. I would say we have a love-hate relationship with City Hall. We love that building, and we sometimes hate that building because it just doesn't always work as well for a modern office building as we'd like it to. We are kind of packed in there. We don't have any new office space or room to expand. It is what it is. We've looked at the gym, but we've always landed on, with the help of the commission, that's important community space, and we don't really want to sacrifice that. So what do? If you've been to the break room, you might think that we don't want people to take breaks because our staff has kept that clean, but after so many years, it just needs something. We've also had to make some changes based on ADA for employees that we've just had to make, and it's sacrificed space. So we would like to consider, for you to consider us to do a little remodel of the meeting room B area, so old fire hall area, dress that up a little bit, and use some of that interim space between the two hallways, what I would call between meeting room A and meeting room B, to make a little more modern break room that's a little more conducive to actually having people want to take a break somewhere. And perhaps use the other break room, if you've ever been in it, for some additional office space or something like that. It's functional. It's fine. I think we're going to be in that building, so I think it's time we start maybe talking about that a little bit and how we can do that. And we'd certainly try to use our people to do as much of that work as we can. So
the old fire station space below that, is that still filled with stuff, or is there an opportunity
like the teen, are you talking teen center?
I feel like we used to store like an old fire truck in there. Am I thinking? Yeah,
Well,
the
we
garage.
use that as a garage, so we
Yeah.
do keep our sort of maintenance equipment there, snow blowers, the lawnmower that we use, at least I think we call it our surveying truck that needs to be out, like ready to go, and So that's kind of spoken for. That's possible too. We just lose that storage space. Maybe Tim would give us his other fire station. And we could use that for like an annex. We'll think about that.
What about that old youth center space? Is that storage or?
Right now, we were just there, we have some mats down and some mannequins there for tactical training and police training. I don't know what you call it. We're using it for our training room because they have to pass certain tests to be able to move on to, and then they have refresher courses. That could be a space that we could use, although it's not really convenient for employees because they have to go down the back staircase to access it. Also not handicap accessible. We've talked most recently with the sheriff's department, and there's some interest in, perhaps utilizing that space for other things there as well, the needs that they have. So it's possible. We just need to kind of look at it holistically. Any space we use there needs some upscaling. Yeah. We do have quite an extensive basement as well. I don't know if that's really conducive for much. Possible.
I am curious though, does it stay dry for the most part?
Well, Al's office doesn't. I would say yes, for the most part. I don't know that we've ever had water in the basement. We have. Dave, why don't you tell a little bit about the...
When we have had water in there in the past, it's because we had our roof drain system that actually piped storm water off the roof through the walls. Those issues have been fixed for the most part. We did some rerouting and updated some of those storm sewer lines. So as far as I know, we haven't been wet for about 3 or 4 years now. Al's office, those folks over there used to kind of take the brunt of it when we'd get a 2-inch rain like we did last week. So, but new pipes, new roof drains seems to have solved that issue. But there isn't any groundwater issue with the basement.
Yeah, and I think it's a good building. Like, I feel like when they built those buildings, they built them they were going to stick around. And I always feel like City Hall will always be there. So, I mean, we do love our building. It's just interesting. And yeah, we would like a rooftop parking garage too, especially on Wednesdays when there's court. I don't think that's going to happen, but. I won't talk a lot about the airport. It's on page 8. You guys know about those projects. We've talked about them and recently did an amendment. It is big dollars. Just a reminder with the FAA projects, the FAA is our largest sort of contributor in terms of grants. The state matches, and we match what the state provides. And so they're big dollar projects, and people sometimes look at the airport as a facility just for business or for hobby pilots, but it's really part of our transportation infrastructure, and that's really the way it needs to be viewed. And so it is an important part of a community and healthy community, and so we do want to continue being good stewards there at the airport as well. I'm going to keep talking here for the sake of time. We share costs on operating with on capital with the county for the center, and so you have some projects there. They're pretty minor. Occasionally, something will happen where we need to do a fix. I think a couple years ago we had a heating, HVAC, or an air conditioning or something that was a significant cost, but we continued to push out the reconstruction of the parking lot because the parking lot's still in pretty good shape. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that as well. They have talked a long time about an addition to the center. We haven't talked to them seriously about that, so that's remained in the out years, but sometimes we continue to put that on there so everyone doesn't forget that that's something on the table to talk about. I did mention the library roof. That's scheduled for 2023. That can wait no longer, so that is going to happen. Also, Dana and her board thought it'd be nice if they had smoke detectors in the library, and I said, yeah, I think that would be nice. So, we don't know the long-term future of that building, but whatever the future is, we need to make sure that we have that, have certain types of equipment there. So that's out in capital. You also see a number of $40,000 under a line item called New Library, and we didn't find a building to buy for $40,000, but what that is a line item for a feasibility study. The Library Foundation has been working diligently on raising some funds. They'd like to meet you, Commission, with half the funds to move forward with a feasibility study to talk about what the community would like to see in a new facility, when the community might like to see that, would the community be willing to support that financially, and where would the community like to see that if they would financially support that. So the study will probably take a year or more to complete, but I think that's the right way to go about it. There's no sense moving forward with such a thing if that isn't an area of interest, although, as you know, it's in your strategic plan, and the foundation is doing a lot to get people in the community excited and talking about that. In an out year, we've put a number for a new facility. I think that number is probably very low, but should that feasibility study have a positive outcome, we'll have to start working towards that. We have a model for public facilities that we've used before that's worked. So that would be a similar model. So we'll see what happens there in the community. But if the foundation has not contacted you yet, I'm presuming that they will come and contact you about supporting that in the capital budget. So, any questions there? Okay, we're going to move on to Parks and Rec. Lots of stuff there. Our Parks and Rec budgets are oftentimes carved up according to the park, so you'll see sort of a list. And you all know, because you use the parks, all the things that we could do and need to be done. We just don't have the expanse of capital that we need to do them. So we do what we can, and we make some decisions each year accordingly. But you see there in 2024, we have, of course, and we always have a mower budgeted. We also try to improve one of our playgrounds each year with new playground equipment. We also replace some park furniture. We have trucks and equipment that we need to replace. We also have, if you'll scroll sort of down towards the middle in 2024, some things budgeted for Riverside Park in terms of trail replacement. Also, we are trying to replace bleachers. We need to make sure our bleachers are ADA compliant, and so we're tasked to kind of buy a few at a time because of the cost. We can't just invest in all of them at once. We always have to do some reshingling and repair to some of our facilities, and so we're working on those things too, as and when we can. So that bleeds into the next page as well, but oftentimes parks is somewhere one of the budgets where the commission likes to visit a little bit. We are in the process, as you know, of working on West Side Park. Have a lot to do there yet. Todd has applied for a number of grants for the resurfacing of the tennis courts to pickleball courts, so in Westside Park. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that in July we can come to you and say we have a big grant for that, but we'll see what happens there. Not a lot of capital at the Huther Family Aquatic Center because it's pretty much just built, so that's good. But, and it's a big but, as you know, in the future, we're going to have equipment that's going to need to be replaced, refurbished, restored, and so we're going to do our best to keep it maintained, but we want to keep that out on the horizon for you. Martin Creek's part of our Parks Department, as they're the ones that maintain the flood hazard mitigation trail. Big capital expense there this year, and we should be back on track, on trail then in 2024. We always have some maintenance costs, of course, associated with that long stretch of creek, but the big expense, which FEMA is helping us with, will be past us. So just going to pause there. If on parks anybody has something they want to bring up or say, you know, we absolutely need an alpine slide or something.
The $1 million+ in improvements slated for Sartoma Park in 2025, is that a pretty solid plan, or is that tentative?
Todd, would you like to speak to that?
That goes back to the 2009-2010 study we did with Stockwell on our outdoor sports facilities. And if you remember those conversations, that was when soccer, softball, baseball, there was some talk of buying property and doing a sports complex to the tune of $25 million. There was also a list created of about $2 million to do renovations and improvements to current facilities. So we've whittled down and done those improvements, and those are the remnants of what's left. So it's the big ticket items that are now left if we're going to improve our current facility.
And oftentimes the way some things come forward is somebody says, we'd really like a X, or we'd really like to fix X. And, you know, if it happens to be in Sartoma Park where we have some money budgeted, then we work towards that. So sometimes people wonder, well, why are you doing something in this park and not that park? And boy, you haven't done anything in Trip Park or name your place. But if we have a contributor or a group that wants to help us out, we often take that initiative and then either match or work towards a grant or something like that. Okay, I'm going to start talking about bridges then. So bridges is one of those things that do fall under streets, and then they kind of bleed into parks when we talk about the Meridian Bridge. So we'll talk about sort of the road bridges first. You can see there that we have to do some work on the Cedar Street Bridge. That's been in the works for a number of years, as well as the 23rd Street Bridge. The big is a bridge improvement grant that we were able to have as a part of those projects. The underwater inspection budgeted for bridges, we work with the state on that, and we pay a portion of underwater inspection as well. We do have a Meridian Bridge repair. So if you take a look, we've been talking about those south columns that's being engineered right now. We don't fully know the cost there, but that $300,000 wasn't something that was in the budget just a couple of years ago. So we had our engineer take a look at it. It's more than one pier that needs to be shored up and repaired. So I think this will be a good exercise in understanding the real costs involved in the full bridge when we get to that point in our community. So certainly a project to talk about if you want to, but I just don't see any way why we shouldn't continue forward with that. We want to continue that to be sound for our community. And those pillars, we don't want the concrete coming off when folks are walking across the bridge. So we do probably in the next few years need to start talking about when is the right time to do that inspection. We have a number in the budget for that. I do think that number is probably low. But I think as we get towards the 100th anniversary and we start celebrating that bridge and doing some public education, we'll have more understanding from the community as to where they're at with that. Even inspection, we may need some support on in terms of revenue source, because that's a lot of dollars. Uh, 911 dispatch is something that we've worked heavily on, as you all know, to upgrade our radios and consoles and the equipment down there. If you haven't ever been to dispatch or haven't spent time down there, it'd be worth your while to check that out. So we don't have a lot of capital planned in the upcoming years, but we also sometimes have things that occur that we need to address. So for now, we feel like we're in pretty good shape in the dispatch center. As we get to water utility, wastewater utility, we get into the big dollars, and you all know that. So you can take a look through there at all the things that Kyle and his team are doing. You have a big chunk of teal on page 13 that are SRF projects, state revolving loan fund projects. So you see a lot of water main replacement associated with SRF projects there that needs to get done, and you see those are big numbers. As I look into 2024, 376 and 225, and this year 300, 200. They don't call him the $1 million man for no reason. But the state revolving loan funds is a program that we've had a lot of success with, but it is a loan, so those are paid back by rates, and so people need to be aware of that. And those projects are budgeted in today's dollars, and so we hope that that's where we're at when we get to moving forward with those projects. But as you all appreciate, we have to do these things, and our infrastructure is really an important piece of and probably the most important piece of our community. If you look at the very bottom of that teal box, you'll see new meters, and you can see every year for the next couple years we're spending $500,000 on meter replacement. So it's going to be a lot of investment, but certainly necessary investment. And Yankton's always been a town that puts their infrastructure first. I know that the commissions have always felt that that's very important, and we're hoping that you feel the same way. So as you look through and you compare water utility with streets, for example, you'll see many similar projects, which just makes sense. And from this fund to complete that project, that portion of that project. So appropriate to do, just a little something different than we've done in the past in terms of packaging projects together. Questions on that? It's interesting how when we talk about certain departments, we talk a long time about a small dollar amount, and when we get to Kyle's department, we just talk a couple $100,000 there and $500,000 there, but that's the cost. He's worth every penny. Our EDA project, so you see some more light blue and teal there. We're working hard on the wastewater plant. Lots to come there in terms of wastewater utility, and some really big numbers there when we look at our current project that we're undergoing, as well as the actual wastewater plant project improvements you see there. That's used combination of SRF, ARPA, and the consolidated funds for water, wastewater. You see $3 million this year, $21 million, $20 million. That's going to bump that final budget number really high. So when we do submit the budget to you, people are going to think, wow, the budget's really increased, and it has because of the size of the projects that we're doing in wastewater here. So also there in the middle of the page, another one of those loans to the Gale Drive TID and the Mead Area Development TID from wastewater, because there's water and wastewater utilities there. So you can see those numbers there are large. And one thing that was really, I think, smart of the city commission is that they used a CMAR, because we don't know if we'll be able to complete all aspects of the project at the wastewater plant. Given the budget we have, there may be something we have to scale back on or push to a later year. And in a bid build design, you're either going to find the money or not. With a CMAR, as we go, we can procure some things and know the cost and keep going incrementally. So we're really pleased, especially in this market, that the commission moved forward the way they did. So we're hoping that's going to become successful for us, and we can take advantage of ordering things early because we have long lead times, et cetera.
Can you remind me, this camera for collections at $275,000, what is that again?
Yep, Kyle can remind you of that. Betty's going to use the word infiltration.
Yes, that's a camera that we use to televise the underground sewer lines, the sewer mains. We try to do it routinely ahead of projects, so we know if we need to replace sewer. One of the things that's going to come out of our collection system master plan is starting to put some real numbers to, in the past, we haven't really been doing a lot of collection sewer line replacement. We're going to need to start doing that here in the future. The camera's going to give us the ability to televise that, tie it directly into our GIS mapping that we're working on. And then we also try to do it with new projects to go back and confirm that new construction was done properly and correctly, and things like that. So.
Other water, wastewater questions? If not, we'll talk a little bit about the cemetery. There isn't a lot of capital there, but of course we need to keep up with the maintenance of the cemetery. So there's usually mowers and trimmers that we utilize, that we purchase each year to keep Chris and his crews going there. This year we're going to fix the roof on the shop. You see that there. Not a big dollar amount, but needs a little care. Solid waste collection and the disposal, which is joint powers. You can see there we have quite a bit of capital there. Replacing those transfer trailers under solid waste disposal and recycling and joint powers. As I told you, the prices keep going up there. While that's a shared expense with the joint powers, it's increasing. So we have to talk about that in the big picture. So the big picture of solid waste and the big picture of the recycling in Vermillion, as that's part of our joint powers. Our single stream recycling, as you know, is part of our individual solid waste, so it's not part of our joint powers operation. So just want to bring that forward for those of you who may not be familiar with that. But lots of capital coming up there, but it's got to happen. And we have some capital here in our transfer station this year. We need to do some rehabilitation of the flooring in our transfer station. We still participate in capital with Fox Run, but we share that cost with Great Life. So every year we sit down and visit with them and talk with them about what it is that they might want to or need to purchase. You made a big investment in the grounds with the pump house and some irrigation repair, as you know. And so that's working well for them. And they needed to do some clubhouse maintenance and upgrades. If you haven't been there, you should check it out because it looks great. Also solve some issues that they had. And then in the out year here in 2024, you see some mowing equipment and the like that they would like to purchase. So operation-wise, they run the course, but we have an agreement to share in the capital costs. Talking about the SAC, you can see based on our agreement, our percentage of the share of each item here that's all listed. So what you see there is the total amount, and we have a percentage of the share. So we'll look at bigger costs here coming up. You can see roof replacement. We'll have 15% of the number you see there, and that is a huge bite out of our capital improvement plan. And I think those numbers will probably end up being low, just given what we're seeing with bidding as well. So lots to look at there. We always do some replacement of equipment. We're resurfacing this year, as you know, the tennis courts. We have a 40% share there. The fire alarm system needs to be upgraded, so that's something that we'll share in the cost. And then we have some theater TLC that needs to get done as well this year. Next year, the big story is really, again, the roofing we'll need to take a look at. And they have some money, again, budgeted for fitness equipment, et cetera. And then a motherboard replacement, that's a 50-50 split. So, again, that's an aging facility that we need to continue to put capital into in order to keep that going for the community. The 506 is something we talk about each year and part of our capital. And what I like to say there is that we do have a chunk of money budgeted there for things that we know we're going to do every year. So that is the light gray or light blue that you see there. That's the open asphalt, street construction, downtown paving, alleys, parking lot repair, those types of things. So that's consistent in our budget. We don't really necessarily have specifics for you, but we do take a look each year at what we might need to focus on and spend some dollars there. We have some other loans to TIDS there to work on those projects. You see that as well. And then you can see some of the street projects that we have budgeted in each year. In 2024, for example, we have 8th Street, Burley to Fertig. The letters there, www isn't a website address. We're sharing that project with water, wastewater. So if you flip back in water and wastewater utility, you should see monies there for that project as well. Also, there's a large project scheduled for next year. It looks like Cedar Street, 2nd to 4th. So one of the things that Adam and I talked about extensively when we talked about Cedar Street was, what do we do there? It's in the downtown area. We don't have the capacity to make every street look like Walnut for a couple reasons. The capital cost, one, but also the maintenance cost and the cost of parks to put the planters and everything. But what we did think of was, let's construct it in a way where we can put some of those big planters, for example, out. And so it coordinates. So it's kind of the downtown kind of looks like, an ensemble, so that it coordinates well with what we've done on Walnut, knowing that we just can't make every single street look like that gateway. But that was intentional to be a welcoming street and a welcome to the Meridian Bridge and the Meridian Plaza. So we did spend more money, as you know, on that. But that's the hope there. And, we'll see as the Meridian District continues to develop, what other opportunities there are there. But historic poles, et cetera, but not the full out uplighting and all those types of things that we did on Walnut. If you flip the page, you'll see or scroll down, you'll see there's more projects there on page 19. that we need to talk about and address. So I'll pause there before we get to central garage, because the 506 is a lot of dollars, and it's a big portion of our capital each year. If anybody wants to talk about, hey, why are we doing a certain street? The street shop and engineering does keep a sort of rolling list of projects that need to occur. They inspect the streets. Some streets hold up better than others, depending upon heat and how Mother Nature treats us. So, if a street's in good shape, they leave it alone. So sometimes they get pushed, but we always have plenty that need to be done. So, again, it's not random. It's when it needs to happen.
The 15th Street, Summit to Dakota, that's still just an out year because it's no
Development
real
driven.
hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. So that's a good point, Commissioner Schramm, that some of the streets that are scheduled, we continue to push because we'll wait and see what happens with our development community. It might come to the forefront. For example, Gale Drive, I didn't think we'd be talking about that extension as soon as we are. But development has driven that, and we have a TID put together, and here we go. So, I would presume, as and when Thrive moves forward with Garden Estates, that'll change some things in that area of town as well. Ben, how are you doing out west there?
Doing just fine.
Okay.
Appreciate the information.
If we're okay with the 506, talk a little bit about central garage. We got some capital here this year to spend in central garage, a little more than we typically do, but we have a lot of things that we've pushed for a lot of years that just need to happen. And will hopefully make our operations there a lot smoother. You see, we have a forklift budgeted and out year that we need to have happen. So I'm guessing what you'll see in central garage is, as we're starting to decide what do we do with all of our operations street-wise, maybe less large capital sort of brick and mortar purchases, and more of the equipment that can be moved or utilized elsewhere until we have that vision. So we're hoping that we can talk about that in the community, and when you're ready to take a look at those facilities, I think it'd be an eye-opener to do that. They're pretty cramped, and they're pretty tight the way it is too. So if you ever have the chance and you're going up north, if you swing in on Highway 18 towards Canton, you'll see Lincoln County built a new shop building that's right on Highway 18, on the south side of Highway 18. They have a very nice turnaround. That's just one idea and concept, not that we would need the type of street shop operations that Lincoln County does, but it's a kind of planted a vision to me as something that might work a little bit better of a footprint. We are where we are down by the river, but it'd be nice to have not so compact of an area, so to speak. Over the years, the commission has purchased a number of small parcels along there, so there is some room to work with there too. So those are the main things that I wanted to talk to you about. So I would love to hear questions or things that you would like to talk about, or questions if you would like to ask the department heads about. We have about 15 minutes before your regular business meeting, and I also would like to know if you'd like to continue this conversation later on this evening or tomorrow or another day.
Commission, do we need to meet any longer, or? Okay. All right. I do have a question. The old water treatment plant, I know we've been entertaining some interest in that, but is that building stable now, or do we still need to look at making some investments in that to make sure it stays in decent shape?
I think certainly stable. I think it's not move-in ready for anyone at this point. Recently we worked with, I'm not sure if it was EDA or EPA, on an asbestos removal process. DA&R, perhaps, Dave and his team worked on that, and we had an opportunity to take advantage of a grant to remove the asbestos. I think what we should probably do is take a look at our strategic planning when we get closer to strategic planning, which I wouldn't recommend we move into until we know our future a little bit more financially, because that will definitely impact our decisions, and say, are we ready to pick that ball back up? Do we want to talk about that? Do we want to talk about a lease? Do we want to talk about a sale? Or do we want to just wait and see what happens as we move forward? But I mean, in terms of, is the building safe? Yes. Would it be? It's not. It's certainly not turnkey ready.
Is there any more questions, discussion on the capital improvement budget? All right, and we've established we don't need to meet again about this tonight or a future night, so if there's no more discussion, I would entertain a motion to adjourn till our regular meeting at 7 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed?
Commissioner Brunick, you can just
We are
stay
adjourned.
on, and if you'll mute and stay on, we'll catch up with you in about 13 minutes.